Sille, I hope I will introduce you, but I hope you grasp some of the ideas that have been spreading around here. It's all Dutch, but I'm so happy that you're here. Sander explained in the morning that our brain has a dysfunction, and it was extended by VINT. We don't make the best decisions automatically. You know better than I think. But in order to live a better life, maybe a healthier or good life, pleasant life, meaningful life, our behavior should be guided. And Sille Krukow, she is a behavioral scientist, visiting professor at several universities, famous in Denmark from your own television show, The Power of Habits. I've been watching it. It was very interesting to learn about how you can move people to a better decision with, is it okay that I would call it simple tricks, or is that too cheap? Okay, I was afraid. But please explain why changing behavior will be a good thing for humanity and we will be better off at the end. Sille Krukow.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much for that introduction. I'm going to hopefully explain my thoughts on that. So basically, to me, happiness starts with fulfilling basic human needs, meaning that we have to fulfill needs like ensuring drinking water, clean air to breathe, healthy bodies and minds that are going to carry us through life, and a somewhat stable financial life as well, ensuring that we have food on our table and so forth. And that is really the problem I think we're facing when we're looking to introduce digital happiness. Because right now we're not very good at ensuring those things. We are running short on a global scale of clean drinking water. We are polluting the air we're breathing. We are creating lifestyle diseases that are killing us. And we are basically not very good or skilled at managing our own or public funds. And that's where I see technology playing a huge role. Because the challenge that we're really facing here is behavior and poor everyday decision making, basically. We are the ones polluting and using too much water when we're taking too long showers. We are the ones creating lifestyle diseases when eating way too much calories than our bodies can handle. We are the ones spending our money on shoes rather than saving for the future, and so forth and so forth. And that's where technology comes in. Because technology can play a great role in that. Because what technology can do, the way I see it, is to make the right decisions the easy ones. So when we wish to alter human behavior, that is what it's really about. Making right decisions the easy ones. And that can be a big challenge. But it means that when we want to search for digital happiness, we have to start out by looking at ourselves and at the end users, because they hold the key to creating great digital solutions that can ensure happiness in the long run. So we have to do two things. We have to, first of all, understand what drives everyday decision making. We have to know how to map user journeys and how to work with that, and how to integrate technology in that. And then we have to know how to design for behavior change. And hopefully I'm going to give you a tiny little insight to how me and my team work with that, at least. But let's get into it, because the first thing we need to understand is what drives human decision making. And to put it very, very general, human decision making is controlled by two systems: the reflective system and the automatic system. Reflective thinking is conscious thinking. That's what you're using right now. That's when you're translating knowledge, insights, into something that makes sense or doesn't make sense. You're evaluating it and holding it up against your prior experience and so forth. Reflective thinking is what allows us to translate knowledge into a behavior change. It allows us to create a plan. It allows us to come up with good steps that we can follow or create new technologies that can help us succeed. So reflective thinking is a very important thing for us as a species on this planet. And it is what makes us the superior species as well. So it's a good thing. But there is a downside to reflective thinking, which is that it is very slow and very energy demanding, meaning that your blood sugar is actually dropping right now because you're being reflective. We can actually only focus for, say, 20 minutes at the time, or 45 minutes if we're lucky and really fueled on sugar and so forth. So I know I'm up against the biological odds here. So I'll speak a bit faster. So basically, what we have to take into consideration when developing new technologies and working towards ensuring happiness is working with the other system, automatic thinking. Because automatic thinking are all the unconscious systems. That's what we call habits. That is all the things we don't need mental energy to do. So looking at yourself right now, automatic behaviors would be every time you move around in your chair, every time you take a sip of the water. Those are things that does not require a great mental process to do. The challenge that we are up against is that 90% of human decision-making is driven by automatic behaviors. And the thing is, automatic behaviors are not controlled by knowledge. It's not controlled by what we know is the right thing to do. Because we all know we should be taking shorter showers, should be taking public transportation, blah, 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 blah. Automatic behaviors are not controlled by that. Automatic behaviors are controlled by our surroundings in the moment of choice, and how well or bad these play with or against basic human instincts, like the pack mentality or cognitive biases. So basically, we need to understand that the end users whose happiness we're looking to increase are just like us, working like this. That means that on an evolutionary state, we are actually better suited to live in an environment like this. Because this is the savanna where everything is super simple. Everything is what it is. And the most important thing here is you get instant feedback on your actions. So if I was standing here, I could be clapping my hands, and then I would immediately know if that was a good or a bad idea. The way I would know that would be if this guy raises his ears and starts running towards me, it probably was a really, really bad idea. But if he turns around and runs the other way, it might be a good idea, because then I can chase him and eat him, maybe, if I can slaughter him. But the thing is, here, everything is so simple. If it's red, it's probably hot, but I will know when I touch it, because then I'm going to burn my hand instantaneously. If something is black with yellow stripes, it's probably venomous, but I'll know if I touch it, then it's going to sting me or something else. So this works really well with automatic thinking. The challenge is this, complexity. We have created so much complexity in our everyday life that we are having a hard time succeeding knowing that we are 90% automatic creatures. And that's what technology should look to reduce, basically. Reduce complexity on the human side, helping us make the right decisions, the easy ones. That, to me, is how we're going to ensure digital happiness in the future. And the way we're going to do that is by creating what we call choice architecture. So basically, choice architecture is everything that surrounds our decision-making. So it's everything from what you meet just before you're deciding something, during that set of choices, and following the event. Choice architecture can be online, it can be offline, it can be in any space. Basically, it is everything that influences our psychological state of mind and our decision-making in the moment of choice. But in order to create choice architecture, we have to get out here. So sitting behind a desk and trying to figure out what's actually going on out there in the real world, what do people want, how can we apply this technology and so forth, that is a no-go if you want to work with behavior. designing to change behavior starts in the real world. You have to get out there and do observations, because we have no idea what's actually going on. And the thing is, we cannot ask each other, because when you start asking people on what kind of behavior do you have, what influences you in the moment of choice, we're going to give a reflective answer trying to describe an automatic behavior, which is not going to be behavior. It's our own perception of what we think we do. So as developers, the first thing is to get out there. And you have to do two things. You have to map human behavior, meaning mapping interactions. And of course, when I say get out there, this can also happen in an online space. But you basically have to map out the user journey, what actually goes on out here. And then you have to map the existing choice architecture. Because we have to know that there is nothing wrong with human decision making. We're just kind of challenged because we're 90% automatic. So the problem that we're looking to solve is the existing choice architecture, because it's obviously facilitating a wrong behavior right now, or poor everyday decision making. So what we're looking for in existing choice architecture are cues and guides. And let me just explain to you what cues and guides are, because it's not everything in our surroundings that controls our decision making. It's tiny little triggers in our environments that we use to navigate, and especially navigate our automatic patterns based upon. So think of cues and guides as every time you come to an airport that you haven't been to before. What we do is we get out of the plane and then we try to figure out, what am I to do right now? Where should I go? Where is the exit? Where is the baggage claim? And so forth. The way we navigate is we look for cues and guides to help us. That can be signage. It can be pavement, it can be architecture, sounds, lighting, everything that leads us in a certain direction and tells us, gives us the instant feedback from the savannah and tells us, what am I to do here? If we don't get tangible cues and guides, we look for social cues and guides. So we jump to our pack mentality and start copying what does everybody else do. Well, they go right, so I'm just going to start going right as well. We do that to preserve mental energy. So what you're looking to design when you're designing behavior are good cues and guides that can facilitate a behavior change. And when you go out and investigate to begin with, you look for the barriers, because right now some cues and guides are designed in the wrong way. They're facilitating the wrong behavior, so we should change those. We look for 3 different types of barriers: psychological barriers, physical barriers, and social barriers. I'm not going to introduce you to all of them today, but basically social barriers is if you want everybody to go right, but you have a group of people going left, that creates a social barrier because we are driven to follow each other. Physical barriers, if you want people to litter in a litter bin, but you forgot to put up a bin, that becomes a physical barrier. And psychological barriers are what we encounter the most. So psychological barriers is if we provide information in a very heavy and non-automatic way. So let me show you an example of a psychological barrier. This is a psychological barrier. If you want to communicate a message or change behavior in a moment of choice, providing knowledge in a language that end users does not speak or that does not match the current situation and so forth, it becomes a psychological barrier. So once you know the barriers, then you can start developing the interventions or the cues and guides that are going to change human behavior. The way you do that is you grab into a library of different behavioral design principles, which is a mix of design thinking and behavioral economics put together. One of these principles are visual directions. So basically, giving visual directions is a very efficient way of changing human behavior. But that's easy for me to say. And I want to give you guys the chance to experience it yourself. So we're going to do a small test. Now you all have to put up your finger like this. Cool. Great. And then in a second, I'm going to change the slide. I'm going to stand over here. Oh, I'm not that tall. And then what you have to do is you have to point in the direction the slide says. And I am timing you, so be really, really fast. You get it? Point in the direction the slide says. You ready? Here we go. Yep. Cool. I see around 80% pointing that way. I am pretty sure it says left. But what I saw happening was around 80% of you pointed that way, and then some of you changed the direction really fast, and a few of you pointed that way. We have to understand that around 80% of the human popularity on this planet has an automatic system that works with visual directions. So if we want to help people succeed, then that is a very good place to start. We're going to have different automatic patterns. That's why we need to get out there and have a look before we start designing solutions. But it's pretty fair to assume that the main bit of this population on the planet are visually driven. I'm going to show you real quick a case we did where we applied this kind of principle into an insurance setting. So we did a case for an insurance company where the challenge was to improve customer satisfaction and employee happiness. So basically, customers were a bit unhappy about the time consumption. So it took a very long time from the moment they reported a broken item until they got their money paid out. So we were to reduce time consumption. And on the other side, the employees were really unhappy because they knew they weren't fulfilling that service and they weren't reaching their KPIs. So what we did was we started looking at the existing choice architecture. In this case, the employees had to do one thing when customers called to report a broken item. They had to be on the phone, be really nice and service-minded, and then at the same time, they had to put in 5 pieces of information into a piece of software, describing where did that happen, do you have coverage, and so forth. But that little piece of template was designed in a way to work with only written language. That meant they had to be reflective when listening to customers, but also reflective while writing into that little template, which meant mentally they had to choose where to focus their energy, so they did not put in the information. That prolonged insurance cases by 20% in time consumption. So what we did, rather than trying to change people, is we changed the template, that tiny little piece of software, moving it from being a written template to a visual one, and then designed so it would match the natural way of the employees to be on the phone with customers. Then we tested that template, and the amount of times where employees would successfully put in those 5 informations in the beginning of the conversation went up by 79%. And more importantly, time consumption per insurance case went down by 31%, and the amount of people that had to interact with one insurance case went down by 10%. So once you know the barriers, you can start overcome them. But that means you need to get out there first and get to know the barriers and so forth. Because then you can go back to the desk and throw up your feet and then start looking for different kind of good solutions. And when sitting here thinking about good solutions, it's actually fairly simple. Because what we're working with is not inventing the wheel. It is transferring good and existing systems or recycling them into a new situation. Let me show you an example where we did that. This is a challenge we were given by the Danish Ministry of Health. They asked us to improve public health, nothing less. But we said, that's going to be a little bit hard, and how much time do you have, and what's your budget? So we decided to focus it a little bit more. What we were looking to improve was public eating habits, especially in low-income areas in Denmark. Because eating habits is the biggest source to lifestyle diseases. So we got a specific area and started looking at shopping habits. Simply because 80% of what we eat is determined by what we put into the basket when we go shopping. Once we make it back home, that's what we're going to eat. So we ran a couple of pilots in supermarkets in low-income areas. And again, we started out by looking at the existing choice architecture, and what we found was in these areas, there was a really big change in choice architecture from summertime till wintertime. In the summertime, tourists would come to this area from big cities, and the choice architecture of the supermarkets would be designed in a certain way. There would be lots of fruits, fresh fish, herbal-looking products, a lot of health communication, but the locals would not buy any of that stuff. They went to the back and bought what they normally would buy. In the wintertime, when the tourists left, the choice architecture changed completely. All the fatty meats came out, all the sugary cakes, and so forth. That told us that the local community here was biased against that whole herbal-looking universe. That did not comply to them. So we started looking for, well, what does comply then? What kind of solutions can we use to nudge them? So we started looking at what do they buy. And there were a bunch of products that were selling really well. And some of them were kind of odd. So one of them was a product called cherry cushions. I don't know if you have it here in Holland, but I had never heard of it before I came to do this study. So a cherry cushion is a cushion full of cherry seeds. Then you put it in the oven and you heat it, and then you can put it on your sore muscles, which is a great product. But how many cherry cushions do you need? That's the question. And they were selling a lot. And this is a low-income area, and I was thinking, wouldn't you want to buy something else? So we asked the store managers to show us what the choice architecture surrounding these products were. And the answer was pretty simple. Because he said, well, it's really simple. I just take the cherry cushions and I add yellow stickers saying on sale or a good bargain, and then I place it in the hot spots. And then the cherry cushions goes like that. So we're like, okay. So let's not work against the biases out here. Let's work with them. And what we did was we added yellow stickers to vegetables. Yellow stickers without saying on sale, without saying a great bargain, just yellow stickers. And then we placed them in the hot spots. And the amount of vegetables being sold went up by 45% instantaneously and continued. Because this allowed the supermarket chain to change their space management tools to help ensure low-income areas would have healthier eating habits, basically. So when designing for digital happiness, it's a matter of predicting human errors. And the reason why I have a picture of my laptop up here is because Apple is, or at least used to, be brilliant at predicting our errors. They know that when I pay $5,000 for a computer like that, I really want it to last for a long time. But they also know that once I make it back home, I'm going to be working for like an hour at the computer, and then I'm going to get up to get coffee. And at that moment, I focus all my mental energy, my reflective thinking on the work I'm doing, not on my computer. And that means I'm not going to be aware of the electrical cord. So I'm going to get up and I'm going to fall in the electrical cord, which is going to leave my computer fall to the ground. That's not going to make me happy or Apple happy. So instead of providing me with a long, heavy manual describing what am I to do when I want to get up and get coffee in an hour or maybe two, we don't know yet, they have just predicted that error by making the plug, and I know they have changed this on the newer versions, which I don't really get, but they have predicted it by making that plug magnetic so that when I fall in the electrical cord, the consequence is just going to be that coming out and nothing happening to my computer. And to me, that is what the mindset should be when wanting to integrate and choose what kind of technologies do we want to implement where and when. It's a matter of predicting our human errors and helping us succeed and making the right decisions, the easy ones, so that we can ensure fundamental human needs rather than adding more complexity to our lives. I love technology, but to me that's the most important thing, that we serve the end user to help them be successful. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I was so happy that you mentioned Apple, because I mean, you mean this? The thing. This is not magnetic anymore.
I know.
So why do you think they did it? Is it because of the revenue or something? Or did I drop my laptop and then I buy a new one? What's your?
Well, I hope they didn't do it for that, because that's not a very long-term strategy. Well, I'm pretty sure they do studies, and before they develop new solutions, they actually have people in testing and looking at how do you interact with the product. I have no idea what the reason for changing that was.
Well, we can't have answers for all the
hopefully have a good
questions,
one.
do we?
No.
Always surprises, also from Apple. I do have one other question, because my behavior is really bad, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So I take very long showers.
Mhm.
I
So
did
do
so.
I.
Okay. So what do you do? I mean, is it helpful to put those yellow stickers on the, in my bathroom or something? No?
No.
Doesn't that work?
No. So basically, in the shower situation, the challenge we're up against is the lack of feedback on time consumption, for example.
Yeah.
We have no idea. We lose track of time when we're in the shower. We cannot see how much water goes down the drain. We get
I
no
don't care.
feedback
I
on
mean,
that
it's-
either. We don't care.
Yeah.
We're in a completely different state of mind. So what we do is we need reminder systems inside of the shower telling us now your shower should end. I'm not sure we're going to comply with that anyway, because that situation is such a unique situation that creates value for us, those long showers.
And how come you? I mean, you're the expert.
How come what?
Did you take long showers?
Because I love long showers, because I'm also human. I don't have feedback and blinking stuff, but I hope someone's going to introduce it into my shower one day.
Yeah. Well, good to hear that you're also human. Thank you very much, Sille
Thank you.
Krukow.